Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined this morning by Andrew Erickson and Derek Brown. Fellas, we are talking some must-start players here in Week 5. A month into the season, it always goes quickly. Let's dive right in. DBro, we will start with you, and we will start with the running backs. Give me your 3 must-start running backs in Week 5.
So I'm going to bring up a guy that a lot of people might not anticipate here. Tyler Allgeier. I think that he's very flex viable this week. We saw those first 2 weeks where he got 15.5 touches. That could happen this week with Atlanta saying, look, okay, you're really good versus the pass. We're not going to pass the ball. Strange, I know. Atlanta wants to run the ball. But they could lean on Bijan, but also Tyler Allgeier this week in a matchup where Houston, 7th highest explosive run rate. It only takes one big run from Tyler Allgeier to pay off. So viable, flex worthy, like him this week. Aaron Jones, next guy I got to bring up here. And this is assuming that, like, okay, his practice reports are good. He's going to be a full go. I know that game's later in the week, and we're still kind of waiting for that. But I think that the efficiency metrics we've seen from Aaron Jones, such a small sample size, toss that in the trash can. He's still a good running back. This matchup is fantastic versus the Raiders, who have allowed the 12th highest explosive run rate, 11th highest missed tackle per attempt rate. As long as he's healthy, Aaron Jones is going to have a day. And James Conner's the last guy I got to bring up here. We might not look at the Arizona Cardinals offense and say, wow, that's really sexy. I want to play all those dudes. But James Conner, we need to give him his flowers. Playing really good football this year. RB19, averaging almost 90 total yards per game. Tackle breaking metrics are through the roof. Cincinnati cannot stop running backs on the ground. 6th worst explosive run rate allowed. 14th in yards after contact per attempt allowed. I think James Conner, a lot of people are going to rank him as an RB2 this week. He's got RB1 and high-end RB1 upside this week.
Yeah, DBro, you kind of anticipated it, but I was surprised with the Allgeier, inclusion here, given how the last couple of weeks have gone. The fact that Bijan, it's not like they would want to take carries away from Bijan because he's just been so good. You're right about the matchup, so I'm just kind of curious, like, by the time we get to Sunday morning, how high do you expect to have Allgeier in your ranks?
I've got him, and Worm, you're going to have to tell me where consensus is at on him, because I've got Tyler Allgeier at RB30 right now. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't know if it's not. But I might bump him up a little bit higher. I want to make sure I'm above consensus on him, but like in the same kind of breath, are we playing Jalen Warren over Tyler Allgeier? Samaje Perine over Tyler Allgeier? I'm not, but I don't know where ECR sits with that.
So interestingly enough, you are actually below consensus by 1. He's RB29. Okay. That's in half PPR. That's as of Thursday morning. He is RB29.
All I heard was Tyler Allgeier RB25. Let's go.
I mean, so yeah, some of the people ahead of him in consensus, Najee Harris, Miles Sanders, are not people you're like excited to start. So I think if you want to be bullish on Allgeier, it is bullish, right? That's the good one. Bearish is the bad one. If you want to be bullish on Allgeier,
yeah, let's go with that.
Then I think it's reasonable to move him up to that high-end RB3 range. Let's do some who should I starts actually here. Now, this tool is free to use at fantasypros.com/start. It's just a player comparison tool when it gives you, the percentage of experts that are picking one player head-to-head over another. You can actually go up to as many as 4 players at a time. We're just going to do some one-on-ones here, and I will start with Allgeier. And this is in half PPR, by the way. And the guy who's one ahead of him in consensus, Gus Edwards. So, DBro, Tyler Allgeier or Gus Edwards, who are you starting this week?
I'm going to go with the bus, man. I think the bus rolls this week. I've got Gus ranked aggressive. I think aggressive. I mean, I've got Gus as an RB2 this week.
That one you are higher on consensus because he is RB28 currently in the expert consensus ranking. So
I love Gus Edwards this week.
You're aggressive there. All right, the next one, Aaron Jones or Alvin Kamara this week?
All right. Right now, I have Alvin Kamara because we don't know the health status of Aaron Jones. We get practice reports Friday, Saturday that he's looking fine. Everything's good to go. I'm going to push Aaron Jones above Alvin Kamara.
And then lastly, James Conner or Ramondre Stevenson?
Oh, it's Conner. And that is sad for me to say, but Mondre has not looked good. The only thing that the reason he's kept his workload is because as bad as he's looked, Ezekiel Elliott's looked worse.
Yeah, I asked that one because I know you're a big Ramondre fan, in a vacuum, but the consensus is on Conner there as well.
I'm low on Mondre. I've got him at RB19 this week.
Yeah.
Like he's an RB2. I won't push him into RB1 range.
Yeah. Erickson, who are your 3 must-start running backs?
Trust the process, folks. Play guys against the Denver Broncos. So Breece Hall is a must-start running back for me. I don't know if anyone's able to start Breece Hall at all like this year besides week 1, and even that was shaky because he was coming off the injury. So Breece Hall, training wheels are off, according to head coach Robert Saleh, and the Broncos are the number 1 matchup for running backs. So you got to start him. Like, if you have him on your team, he's done pretty much nothing for you, and this is the spot you got to start him. Like, you can't ignore the matchup. You can't ignore the coach speak. This should be a positive game. Now, does he get 25 touches? Maybe not, because they paid Dalvin Cook a lot of money, and he's probably going to be somewhat still involved. But this is the spot where if you have Breece Hall, you need a spark on your team. I think you got to trot him out there. So
Erickson, how high is high enough? Where do you have him at? Because I've got Breece as an RB1 this week. That's what I'm curious about.
I mean, I have an RB20. Like, I don't think that, again, it's still the Jets offense. Like, we don't need to go crazy. But I think that you should just start.
Well, maybe I'm just going crazy. Run all over the Broncos.
But yeah, he's going to finish what he started last year. He was on pace for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Broncos until he tore his ACL last year. So going back to that same field, I think it's going to be an emotional game for Breece Hall. I think it gets it done. So he's the guy I'm probably most excited about. I put him in the show sheet like 2 days ago.
I was going to say,
like,
Erickson on like Tuesday said,
didn't you put him in caps too?
It's like, who's playing the Broncos? Breece Hall. That's my must-start running back this week. Don't let me down.
Erickson made sure he got his name in. He was like, all right, got to save this. You can't get him. Breece.
So going with Breece, and then I'm riding the Gus bus as well. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Gus Edwards for me. Look, the Raiders and Texans couldn't run the ball on offense until they faced the Steelers, because the Steelers have just been atrocious against the run back-to-back weeks. Gus Edwards looked good last week coming off the concussion, 15 carries for 48 yards. He had a 69% snap share, which is pretty high for a Ravens running back when they usually are always going running back by committee between Justice Hill and Melvin Gordon. But it was clear that Edwards was operating as the bell cow, and he also had 3 targets, and he actually had a really high route participation at 65%. So if we're getting any additional juice in the receiving game for Gus Edwards, along with goal line touches, along with just rushing efficiency, which he always comes with whenever you start him, I feel confident starting Gus Edwards this week against a reeling Steelers defense. And then my last guy on the other side of that matchup with the Broncos and the Jets, Jaleel McLaughlin. You picked him up off the waiver wire this week, most likely. I do not think Javonte Williams is going to play. He did not practice on Wednesday. When you start the week with the DNP, more often than not, you don't play that week, especially because now it's like he left the game with a hip injury. Now they're saying it's a quad injury. So it's like, I don't know what, is going out of Denver right now. But considering he's coming off a season-ending injury last year, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to have them play him in this matchup. So I don't think Javonte is going to play, where McLaughlin was a top 10 running back last week in half PPR because he scored a touchdown. And even though he played less snaps than Samaje Perine, he still went 7 for 72. He had a 31-yard long rush, caught a touchdown, 32 yards on 3 targets, RB9 last week, like I said, a top 10 running back. And even though he only played 33% of the snaps, 16 total snaps, he touched the ball on 63% of them. So when he's on the field, they're giving him the ball. And by the way, he's the NCAA's all-time leading rusher. This guy can make plays with the football in his hands. So the Broncos seem to like him. He seems to be one of Sean Payton's guys. And so I think they're going to feed him in this matchup against the Jets, which is really good. 7th most rushing yards allowed per game to the New York Jets defense that got destroyed by Isaiah Pacheco. And that's their weakness. Like, that's how you attack this Jets defense, not to their secondary. It's through the ground game. And we know that Denver does want to try to establish the run when they can. So I like McLaughlin.
Breece Hall or Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones.
Yeah, that is where consensus is. Breece Hall or Saquon Barkley if Barkley plays?
Oh, Breece.
Saquon Barkley, man. That's tough for me.
Yeah, I think that is
Come
tough.
on, Erickson. Breece.
I think I would go Breece, too.
I guess.
I'm going to peer pressure you, Breece.
I just don't know how healthy Barkley is.
Yeah, I mean, coming off the injury, you never know.
The Giants.
Would we be surprised if Breece comes out here and gets like 20 to 25 touches? Would that be like just absolutely shocking when the Jets are like, training wheels are off, Dalvin Cook has not played good, okay, let's go Breece?
Look, all right, so I'm changing my answer. I'm going Breece, because if I drafted Breece, I'm playing him this week. Like, again, it's like you can look at the rankings, you can look at the projections. It's like, no, if I drafted Breece Hall and I didn't start him against the Denver Broncos, then why did I draft him? It's like one of these things where it's like, when you draft players that are injury prone, you start them until they get hurt. This is the process here with Breece Hall, where it's like, if he's on my team, he's been on my bench, he sucked for an entire month, I'm starting him against the Broncos.
Gus Edwards or Miles Sanders this week?
Gus Edwards. he is the starting running back on his team.
Please tell me this is not close, Worm, and I got a feeling that Miles probably wins this.
It's not close, but not in the direction you want it to be.
Oh, that's no.
Miles Sanders is so bad.
People need to get on the bus, baby.
I have a feel. It's Thursday morning right now. I have a feeling that will change by the time we get to Sunday.
People need to get on the bus.
To be fair, Gus has not really produced this year because, I mean, obviously there was a concussion. He hasn't gotten that many carries. Last week he had his most attempts of the season with 15. I mean, his weekly finishes are 41, this is just at running back, 41, 18, 42, and 38 in half PPR. But I am with you guys. Obviously, I'm with you guys. You know, I love Gus. Like, he, not only is he the bell cow at this point, he's also the closer. And we think that this Steelers team is not good. They usually play the Ravens close, but we think the Ravens are going to win. Therefore, the Gus is going to be the guy late that's going to get all those carries.
Baltimore is going to pummel them this
Worm,
week.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Gus Edwards was always good against the Steelers, even when their run defense was actually good? Because I remember citing stats where it's like the Steelers haven't given up a 100-yard rusher since Gus Edwards.
Yeah, I mean,
Gus, you're gonna make me pull
Gus
up
is
like
good
Gus
against
Edwards
everybody. If he gets the usage, Gus is a good running back. He's a great fit in the offense. I've been saying it forever. The other thing on Gus too is like Lamar in recent years hasn't run as much near the goal line. He has this year, and that's hurt Gus because Gus has not been getting those touchdowns. But those are going to come just the way they like to use him. So I'm with you. I like Gus. I get why people might be looking at what he's done this year and a little hesitant, but I think he has a really nice week this week. And then
his last three matchups last four matchups versus the Steelers: 66 yards, 10, 87, and 130. That's his last four games versus them.
He's a good running back, and he's a good fit for a slobber knocker.
Get on the bus, people. Get on the bus.
And then lastly, Erickson, just give me a big name that you're going to start McLaughlin over this week.
Ramondre, I guess is the big name I would do.
Wow.
Look, again, I thought about putting Ramondre on my sit. I was thinking about putting him there because, look, it's for me. Like, I have him on teams. I'm not sitting him just because I love Ramondre. But I'm giving you permission as the listener. It's like he's stuck for 4 weeks. He's getting as much volume as he can have. It's a bad matchup against the Saints, and he's on the injury report. Like, I'm hoping that, again, not hoping that he's hurt, but I'm hoping that an injury is the reason he's not been the explosive self that he has shown us that he can be. And that's what's limiting. Also, the Patriots' offensive line has been really bad at opening holes, especially their interior. They've had a lot of injuries. So if you're just really frustrated with Ramondre, again, if this was a different matchup, I think that you could probably do it. But I think in this particular spot, Ramondre is someone that I'm not trying to jam into my lineups, and I would take a guy like McLaughlin, who I think is more upside, personally.
The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. This week, I am very excited for what should be an excellent Sunday night football matchup between Dallas and San Francisco, two of the best defenses in football. And yet the total is 45 on DraftKings. The spread is 49ers by 3.5 on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. So San Francisco is getting some real respect as one of the last two undefeated teams left standing. However you bet that one, get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code FantasyPros. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet 5 on the NFL. That's code FantasyPros only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. DBro, hit me with your must-start receivers.
All right. Well, I know that they demolished passing attack last week, but we're going back to the well, baby. I want Michael Pittman versus Tennessee Titans. 9th most fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers, Christian Fulton and Sean Murphy-Bunting, both giving up over 117 passer ratings in their coverage. Pittman's going to have himself a day. Next guy I'm going to bring up here, and we're going to go down the line a little bit. And we talked about previously, like, our worries a little bit about CJ Stroud, things like that. Like, I'm worried about CJ Stroud this week. I am not worried about Bob Woods. I am starting Bobby Trees. I want to sit here and be above consensus on him. I understand. We've had big games out of Nico. We've had big games out of Tank. Robert Woods gets the best matchup on the board against D. Alford in the slot. He's going to run at least half of his routes against D. Alford. D. Alford, 125.8 passer rating allowed in his coverage. I think Robert Woods is going to get peppered with targets this week. And last guy I got to bring up here, Worm, you'll like this one. Zay Flowers, baby. Pittsburgh Steelers have been demolished. Per my dude, Scott Barrett, the wide receiver ones against Pittsburgh. Brandon Ayuk went for 32 points. Amari Cooper, 16. Devontae Adams destroyed them for 42 points. Nico Collins, 35 fantasy points in that game. Zay Flowers is going to crush. You've seen a lot of man coverage from the Steelers. Zay Flowers can eat that up for days. I think he's going to have, along with the bus, Zay Flowers is going to have a day.
I do like hearing that one. Do you worry at all about, Odell looks like he might be back. Rashad Bateman looks like he might be back. That is sort of spreading things around a bit.
No, because the fact of it is that Odell has not commanded targets even when he's been on the field. Same thing with Rashad Bateman, and that makes me really sad to say. But Shotty B is not the same guy that I loved as a prospect. I think the foot injuries really have taken something from him.
By the way, Robert Woods, you said you want to be above consensus on him. In the expert consensus rankings, he's only wide receiver 44, so it's not going to be hard for you to be above consensus.
Oh, I've got him. Bobby Woods, where are you at right now? I've got him at wide receiver. He is inside my top 36. Like right now, I've got him at wide receiver 32.
Okay, so very, very above consensus on him. Then you are buying in big. Let's do some one-on-ones here. Michael Pittman or Calvin Ridley this week?
Oh, Pittman. I'm going Pittman easy.
Robert Woods or Rashid Shaheed?
Woods. This is a terrible matchup for Shaheed. Shaheed feasts versus zone coverage. That's not what you're going to see in New England. So I think it's a lot of targets to Chris Olave. Not much for Shaheed this week.
Okay, that's a good note. And then Zay Flowers or Nico Collins. These guys are back-to-back in the consensus rankings.
Zay Flowers. I want nothing to do with those outside corners for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that CJ Stroud doesn't want anything to do with them either. I've got Zay right now as my wide receiver 17 for the week.
Okay, he's 20 in ECR, so you are also above consensus on him. Quickly, Erickson, Zay Flowers, what do you expect from him this week?
I expect a really big game from Zay Flowers because the thing with the Steelers is, they have a really good pass rush, but like if the pass rush doesn't get there, their secondary just gets absolutely decimated by whatever receivers they're trying to cover. Like Patrick Peterson, man. Oh, God.
I will say, for as good as he's looked, Lamar has been at his worst in not just against the Steelers, but in Pittsburgh in his career. That's where he's played the worst, like pretty by far.
He's going to crush them this week.
I sure hope so. Say goodbye to your own start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Erickson, give me your must-start receivers.
All right. We're going to start with Marquise Hollywood Brown for the Arizona Cardinals. I like Brown in this matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, he's averaging 8 targets, 60 receiving yards per game, 27% target share, 44% air yard share, which is 7th among all players this year. So he's seeing a lot of the downfield looks that are coming from Josh Dobbs. And the Bengals are facing the highest average depth of target this season at 10.3. So Marquise Brown is getting the targets. He's been really consistent. We're liking what we're seeing from Josh Dobbs, and teams are attacking the Bengals downfield, and that's where Marquise Brown can pick up chunky yardage. So even if we're seeing more opportunities for Michael Wilson, who I also do like in this matchup as well, Marquise Brown has still kind of been the alpha guy getting the majority of targets. So I do like Marquise Brown as a guy you probably drafted as a bench receiver that I get a lot of questions about him where it's like, do I start this guy? Like I draft him as a bench guy, but he keeps outproducing all my starters. And it's like, well, maybe you should just slide him into your starting lineup. He's played really well. And he's definitely shown some chemistry with Josh Dobbs. My next guy here is Tutu Atwell for the LA Rams. I know he kind of had a down week last week, but he still saw a decent amount of targets in the offense. Cooper Kupp, we're still not sure if he's going to play in this particular matchup. He says that he wants to play, but the Rams might be kind of like, okay, we're going to hold you back. We want to make sure you're 100%. So it does change a little bit if Cooper Kupp ends up suiting up. But Atwell mostly plays in the slot for the Rams. And that's how you attack the Eagles defense. Like you attack the Eagles secondary with their safeties and their slot corners. They had a lot of injuries. and they've allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers, 9th in total receiving yards per game to wide receivers overall. So I do like Tutu Atwell coming off a subpar game where he still saw 9 targets. So he still had a strong game from a usage standpoint, and he's very easily taken over whatever Van Jefferson. But Van Jefferson has just been running cardio routes for the Rams, where Atwell has really taken on that number 2 role beside Puka Nacua. So I do like the interior attacking that with Tutu Atwell. And then sticking with playing players against the Broncos, Garrett Wilson. Again, Garrett Wilson has been a player that people have been probably hesitantly starting in their lineup just because he keeps on delivering. And I think this is a matchup where we're finally expecting him to actually have a good game. They have Patrick Surtain, and that scared a lot of people away from DJ Moore last week. DJ Moore had a massive game against the Denver Broncos. It didn't even matter because, yes, Surtain is going to be on Garrett Wilson for a little bit of the game. We saw Surtain shadow DJ Moore on over 50% of his routes, but that also means that on the other 40% of his routes, he's running against other cornerbacks on the Denver Broncos, like Demaryi Mathis, who is absolutely horrible, who's allowing a nearly perfect passer rating when he's in coverage this season. So Garrett Wilson, you can't feel confident about starting him most weeks attached to Zach Wilson. But again, the Denver Broncos are the gift that keeps giving on defense. So you got to fire up your Jets if you have them. And that starts with Garrett Wilson, who, despite the fact that he's been playing with Zach Wilson all year long, he's actually been really solid still. Top 5 in target share, top 10 in air yard share. He has the same points as Christian Kirk, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Gabe Davis, and Amari Cooper in PPR. Garrett Wilson. And that's with Zach Wilson as his quarterback. So he's been able to overcome the quarterback woes, and now he finally has a matchup that I think that he can actually take advantage of.
You said before we started recording, Erickson, that you were disappointed none of us had the cojones to pick Zach Wilson as our must-start quarterback coming off of an impressive Sunday night performance, and, of course, now facing the Broncos. This is kind of your way of giving a little shine on Wilson, I guess, by picking his number 1 receiver here, I suppose. Let's do some one-on-one comparisons here. Marquise Brown or Nico Collins?
I think we'll start Marquise Brown. I know Nico Collins has been on fire, but again, just looking at the new matchup, I just don't really love it for CJ Stroud in this passing game, so I'm going to go with Marquise Brown.
Well, the next guy is also I'm taking from this Texans passing game, Tutu Atwell or Tank Dell?
I'm going to go with Tutu Atwell. As long as Cooper Kupp doesn't play, I'll say with that caveat. But Atwell has been really heavily involved, and I like Stafford in this spot here with his receivers.
And then lastly, Garrett Wilson or Terry McLaurin, who plays tonight if you're listening to this on Thursday.
I think I'm going to take McLaurin. Oh, he's playing the Bears. I think
this one is very close, I will say, in the experts.
I think I'll probably lean towards McLaurin. Even though I think Garrett Wilson's the better actual wide receiver. McLaurin's still a very good receiver too. So I think McLaurin's probably the safe guy. But if I had Garrett Wilson on my team and I drafted him, again, this is going back to the whole, I want to play my Jets this week. This opportunity doesn't happen so often where you can actually start them and feel good about it. So again, my ranking is probably say McLaurin, but my heart says Garrett Wilson.
Let's move to the must-start quarterback, tight end, and defense segment. DBro, give me one of each.
I'm going to sit here and double down with Erickson here. Matthew Stafford is a must start. And people can look at the Eagles defense and say, oh, you really want to face that? Yeah, I do. They're a pass funnel. You're not going to be able to run the ball on the Eagles' run defense. So what if the Rams want to move the ball this week? What are they going to do? They're going to have to throw, and teams have had success doing that. 7th highest passer rating allowed this year. 6th most fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. 3rd most passing touchdowns. Yeah, Matthew Stafford is going to be a top 12 quarterback in my ranks. Tight end I got to bring up here, and I put this out on social media. This could be the breakout game for Dalton Kincaid. Jacksonville Jaguars are not only been terrible versus tight ends, but you look at slot production they're allowed. Trey Herndon in the slot has not been able to stop anybody. 145 passer rating in his coverage. Dalton Kincaid has taken over the routes more in the last 2 games. He's got a 65% route rate over Dawson Knox's 54%. This could be the massive breakout game for Dalton Kincaid. I want to be ahead of that. And the defense I got to start this week, is going to be the Detroit Lions. Why are people not giving this defense their flowers? Why are people not understanding how good Detroit's defense has been. They're a shutdown run defense. They can get after the pass, so they're 7th in pressure rate. Bryce Young has not been able to do anything this season. I don't even understand why Detroit is still out on the waiver wire in so many different leagues.
I don't know either. I grabbed them everywhere I could. This week's is specifically, I am right there with you. DBro, I'm going to give you a chance to be bold here, although it may not be that bold based on how this second guy has played this year. Are you starting Dalton Kincaid over Dallas Goedert this week?
I am not. I'm playing Dallas Goedert because I think that he's the skeleton key for how you beat the Rams.
I tried to let you be aggressive here and have a bold stance, and you just said no. You just handed it right back to me.
Yes, I will.
Where do you have Kincaid ranked, DBro?
I've got Kincaid ranked. Let me see. Where is Dalton?
He's
Kincaid?
down. He's at tight end 12 in ECR.
Oh, I've got Dalton Kincaid ranked right now at tight end 9, right ahead of Sir Evan Ingram.
Okay, so you are starting him ahead of
Erickson.
Ingram. Erickson, give me your QB, tight end, and defense.
My must-start quarterback is Green Bay Packers QB1 Jordan Love. I like the Green Bay Packers implied team total. They're facing the Raiders. It's a really good matchup for Jordan Love. Every quarterback that the Raiders have faced has thrown for double-digit touchdowns, aside from Justin Herbert last week, who was playing with like a broken finger. And he still had 2 rushing touchdowns. So I like Jordan Love a lot in this spot, even though he's playing on the road on Monday night. I think that the Raiders are just one of these defenses, again, similar to the Broncos. It's the gift that keeps on giving, especially at the quarterback position. And Green Bay has been really efficient on offense. 4th best in red zone offense, 11th best on third downs. I think they're going to be able to move the football. I mean, basically, the Raiders' only answer on defense is Max Crosby. And if you can find a way to like triple team him, like there's no one else on this Raiders defense that can stop anybody. So I think that with extra rest coming off their Thursday night, pretty poor performance where their offensive line basically was in shambles against Aiden Hutchinson, I think that they're going to right the ship, get the pass protection shored up. And I think that they're going to be able to keep Jordan Love clean in the pocket, and he's going to be able to operate. And he's got his 2 explosive toys back between Christian Watts and Aaron Jones, hopefully back to 100%. I think that's going to add more upside to Jordan Love. So he's been really productive in fantasy. I think that there's no reason to stop playing Jordan Love. So keep him in your lineups. Tight end must start Tyler Higbee. Look, coming off a game, 10 targets. He had a team high 28% target share, 85 air yards. And the Eagles, again, you attack them through the middle of their defense. That's why I like Atwell. That's why I like Tyler Higbee. And the Eagles have allowed the most fantasy points per game to tight ends this season. Like, they bleed fantasy points to tight end. So Higbee's been up and down. He's had a couple good games, a couple bad games where he's disappeared. But they've shown that with last week, 10 targets, like, he can see volume in this offense, especially with the Rams dialing up pass-happy attempts with Matthew Stafford. I think this game is going to be a shootout in the Dome in LA. I think Tyler Higbee's going to be a big part of it. So he's one of my favorite streaming tight ends you can pick up off the waiver wire. I think it's a great matchup for him. And he's a full-time player. Ran a route on 89% of the dropbacks, right in line with his 90% rate from week 3. So I really like Higbee. And then at DST, Miami Dolphins, basically available because they played the Bills the week before, and Daniel Jones got sacked 10 times. Paris Campbell added another sack of his own. 11 sacks for the Giants on Monday Night Football. And then the Giants actually came out of that game with more offensive line injuries than they entered the game with. So Andrew Thomas looks like he's not even going to play. Again, I mentioned the other O-line injuries. Miami's defense is not good, but the Giants' offense is equally as bad. It's the classic case of the movable object versus the stoppable force, and I'm going to go bet on the Dolphins here.
When your movable objects like Evan Neal decide to block players on their own team, it's kind of a problem.
I was dying at the Evan Neal comps to Eric Flowers, and I'm like, oh no, this is so bad.
That's
like,
rough.
Oh my God.
I was like, why is Eric Flowers trending? I was at that horrible tackle in the Giants draft. And, because he's being comped to Evan Hall, who was also a top 10 pick, and so far has not paid dividends for where the Giants took him. So yes, the Giants, you want to target the Giants. The Seahawks defense is horrible, and the Giants can move the ball against them. So yeah,
Seahawks defense was a weak winner because they were facing the Giants, and that tells you everything you need to know given the state of that defense. Quickly, Erickson, would you go so far as to start Jordan Love over Joe Burrow?
No. I actually almost thought about making Joe Burrow my start of the week, but I know I did that last week and it burst into flames. But I still have confidence that I think that Burrow is going to bounce back. So
yeah, I put that in the primer too. When I wrote up Joe Burrow, I was like, this could be the big vintage bounce back game for Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow optimism is not easy to find right now, so you got a couple of guys who are buying in for this week at least. Quick recap here. Must start running backs: Tyler Allgeier, Aaron Jones, James Conner, Breece Hall, Gus Edwards, Jaleel McLaughlin. Must start wide receivers: Michael Pittman, Robert Woods, Zay Flowers, Marquise Brown, Tutu Atwell, Garrett Wilson. Must start quarterbacks: Matthew Stafford and Jordan Love. Must start tight ends: Dalton Kincaid and Tyler Higbee. And the must start defenses / special teams are the Lions and the Dolphins. For DBro and Erickson, thank you everybody for tuning in. I am Ryan Wormeli, and we will see you again next time.